Now, I'll be guiding you through the process of creating your own sourdough starter. Everywhere in the world has a combination of yeast and what is called lactobacteria. It's the lactobacteria that give you the sourdough flavor. The yeast is the leavening agent, and the lactobacteria give it that produce acidic and lactic acids, which give it the sour flavor that you feel in the back of your tongue. Everybody knows San Francisco's probably got the best sourdough in the world. So, as these work together in the air, there's not enough moisture or anything for them to grow on, but they're real easy to capture. All you have to do is mix a combination of rye flour and water, and when you mix that up, you just leave it out in the open air. Use a container with a loose fitting lid. You want it to get plenty of air. And then what's going to happen is slowly but surely the local yeast and lactobacteria are going to start cultivating and colonizing that container of mixed up flour and water. So first thing you're going to need to do is get a container, either glass or plastic, that can be thoroughly cleaned. And then what you're going to do is it needs to be 3 times the size, the volume of the mixture you're making. If you're going to make 1 quart of starter, you need to make sure you have a 3-quart container, because this stuff is going to grow. It's a beautiful thing. It's got a really sour flavor and smell to it. When you just breathe it in, it's so nice. So typically a starter is usually an even ratio of flour to water. Makes a pretty loose starter. Sometimes there's even more water than flour to get a really thin starter. But because when you do that, you have to make an extra set of calculations to get your hydration in the dough right, I've begun doing a really stiff starter where my hydration is between 50 and 55%. Depending on what my pizza dough outcome I want is. By doing this, I don't have to calculate, okay, I've got 100% in the starter, so I've got to make the flour 30 or the dough 30% to get that down to 50% or whatever the calculation is. You got 55% starter, you want a 55% dough, you use 55% hydration in the flour. It's that simple. So, for those of you who don't understand quite what I'm talking about when I talk about these percentages, there's a thing called Baker's percentages. 100% is always the total weight of flour. If you're working with whole grain combined with bread flour, add the 2 amounts together and that's your 100%. You then base all of your other ingredients off of percentages of that. So if you have 100 grams of flour, you want a 50% hydration, you do 50% flour, or 50% water, I'm sorry. So now, we've got that. So now we're ready to mix these together. And we just go ahead and just dump them right together. And then use a whisk to mix them up. So what you end up with, luckily I've already gotten one started. What you end up with is this. Lovely, you can see all the air bubbles in it. It's got an incredible yeasty flavor, smell to it. It's just a great dough. And now all you have is a rye starter. What you need to do next is do a test run of this starter, because not everybody's lactobacteria is great. I'm 10 miles from San Francisco. I can't make sourdough with the bacteria from around my house to save my life. So, in that case, I've got a cheat for you. There's a new company in Indianapolis called Lyofirm. They've learned how to cultivate the lactobacteria. It took them 9 years to get the San Francisco bacteria right. But now you can buy it and you can make true San Francisco sourdough in about 6 hours, no matter where you live. The longer you take to let it brew, the better the flavor's going to become. So if you can let it cultivate overnight in the refrigerator, you're set. So what I do with that is I just create a simple sponge, which is a percentage of the flour, usually about 33% of the flour that I'm going to use in my bread recipe. Mix that with yeast and the lactobacteria culture, and I end up with this really loose but incredibly fragrant starter. And this is great for 2 reasons. If you're not going to produce sourdough on a daily basis, you don't want to have to feed your starter every day. At a certain point, it becomes cost ineffective. So if you can make this in 6 hours and you only want to make sourdough 1 or 2 days a week, this is a great cost-effective way to do it. Another trick here is use Rapunzel yeast. It's the best yeast you can get. It's organic, and it deals with the acidic nature of the lactobacteria much better than any other packaged yeast I've used. They all fail in that kind of acidic atmosphere. So that's how you make your own sourdough starter. So thank you very much. Bye.